All right, let's talk about one of the most genuinely chilling ghost ship stories you'll ever hear. And trust me, this is way more than just a tale of a lost vessel. It's a real-life maritime mystery that kicks off with a terrifying distress call and ends with, well, it doesn't really end. It just leaves us with questions that have stumped people for decades.
So just imagine for a second, you're a radio operator out on a calm sea, and suddenly this message starts crackling through your headset. An SOS is bad enough, right? But this is something else. A ship is calling for help, but the message says the captain and all the officers are already dead.
And then it keeps going. The sender adds that probably the whole crew is dead. That one word, probably, just paints this absolutely horrifying picture. The guy sending the message is alone, surrounded by bodies, trying to figure out what in the world happened.
And then the final two words, I die. After that, just a garbled mess of noise. And then complete, total silence. The transmission cuts out, but the mystery? Oh, the mystery's just getting started.
So where did this even come from? How did it all start? To really get what's going on, we have to rewind back to the very beginning, to the moment these incredibly bizarre messages were first heard.
The year is 1948. We're in the Strait of Malacca, which, is one of the busiest shipping channels on the entire planet, right between Malaysia and Indonesia. The weather's fine, the sea is totally calm, just another normal day out on the water. That is, until that SOS shatters the peace.
Now, what's so important here is how this message was sent. This wasn't some panicked voice on a radio that could get distorted by static. No, this was sent using Morse code. The whole dots and dashes thing. And Morse code is incredibly reliable. It can cut through all sorts of interference over huge distances. So when multiple ships picked this up, they knew it was legit, and they knew it was close.
Okay, so the distress call is real, it's terrifying, and it's nearby. A rescue was immediately set in motion. One vessel heard the SOS, spun its wheel, and headed straight into the unfolding mystery.
And that ship was an American merchant vessel called the Silver Star. Her captain heard that horrifying message and didn't think twice. He immediately diverted from his route to go help, having no idea he was about to become the one and only witness to the fate of the SS Orang Medan.
So after a few hours, the Silver Star finally spots the Orang Medan on the horizon. But what they see is just weird. The ship is just floating there, dead in the water. It doesn't look damaged, it's not sinking, there are no signs of a fight, there isn't even smoke coming from the funnels. The crew of the Silver Star is shouting, blowing their horns, but all they get back is this eerie, heavy silence.
The captain of the Silver Star knew in his gut that something was terribly wrong. So he put together a boarding party to go over and see what was happening, a decision that was about to drop them right into the middle of a waking nightmare. The second the rescue team set foot on the deck of the Orang Medan, they were met with just absolute horror. Bodies were everywhere, on the bridge, in the chart rooms, sprawled out on the deck. The entire crew was dead. But it wasn't just that they were dead, it was the look on their faces. Every single person had the exact same terrifying expression. Their eyes were wide open, their mouths were gaping, and all of them were staring up at the sky in what you can only describe as pure, unfiltered terror.
And their bodies were all frozen in these weird positions. Many of them had their arms stretched out like they were trying to push something away, trying to fend off some kind of invisible threat in their final moments.
And here's where it gets even stranger. Despite these looks of absolute horror, there were no signs of violence. Not a scratch, no blood, nothing to suggest a fight. Even the ship's dog was found dead, frozen in the middle of a snarl. And in the radio room, they found the operator, the man who sent the SOS, slumped over his equipment, with his fingers still on the Morse code key. The boarding party was completely spooked, and who could blame them? They decided the only thing to do was to tow the ghost ship to the nearest port so investigators could figure out what happened. But, well, the Orang Medan wasn't quite done yet.
So the crew of these Silver Stars hooking up the tow lines, and that's when everything just goes haywire. All of a sudden, thick smoke starts pouring out of one of the cargo holds. Within minutes, the whole ship is on fire. The boarding party had to literally run for their lives, just barely making it back to their own boat. Moments later, a massive explosion just ripped the Orang Medan apart, and it sank beneath the waves, taking its secrets right down with it.
So now, the ship is gone. The crew is gone. All we have is the testimony of the men on the Silver Star. The story became a legend of the sea, and without any hard evidence, all anyone could do was guess. And boy, did the theories start flying.
The first big question people ask is, did the ship even exist? And it's a fair point. Skeptics will tell you there's no official record of a ship named the SS Orang Medan in any of the major shipping registries. But on the other hand, people who believe the story argue that right after World War II, the seas were a pretty chaotic place. You had tons of ships involved in smuggling and other shady stuff, and they'd often use fake names or just stay unregistered to fly under the radar.
Okay, so let's say the ship was real. What in the world could have killed the crew like that? The most common scientific theories all point to whatever was in the cargo hold. One idea is that it was carrying hazardous chemicals like potassium cyanide. If seawater got in and mixed with it, it would create a poison gas that causes suffocation almost instantly. That could explain the terrified faces and why there were no injuries. Another thought is unstable nitroglycerin, which could have leaked, released fumes that killed the crew, and then later ignited, causing that huge explosion.
But then there's a much darker, more sinister theory. Some researchers speculate that the Orang Medan wasn't just any smuggling ship. They think it was on a top-secret mission illegally transporting chemical or even biological weapons that were developed by Japan's infamous Unit 731 during the war. If there was a leak of that kind of cargo, well, it would definitely explain the bizarre deaths and why the ship's existence was kept off the books.
And this is why the story just refuses to die. It's more than just a ghost story. In 2003, the CIA actually declassified a letter from way back in 1958 that talks about the Orang Medan. The author says, if the tragedy of the Orang Medan is ever solved, it may answer the mystery of many other disappearing sea vessels and airplanes. The fact that U.S. intelligence was seriously discussing this case years after it happened, that adds a whole new level of intrigue, doesn't it? So that's where we're left. What really happened out there? Was it just a tragic accident with some poorly stored chemicals? A secret military operation that went horribly, horribly wrong? Or something else? The truth, whatever it was swallowed by the sea. It was destroyed by fire and water, leaving us with one of the greatest and most haunting unsolved mysteries of all time.